Hey guys, I am Crystal and welcome to our 7th installment of Ask a Chef. Can't believe we've done 7 already. Ask a Chef is a series brought to you by Prairie Food Co-op and Culinary Confidante. Prairie Food Co-op is a community-owned grocery store that will provide a marketplace for as much locally and sustainably produced food as possible. We're aiming to open our doors in Lombard, Illinois in the very near future. Culinary Confidante is a culinary education-based business that provides in-home coaching, cooking parties, and workshops. Together, Prairie Food Co-op and Culinary Confidante designed the Ask a Chef series in an effort to demystify the kitchen, bringing the workshop to you. Today's Ask a Chef topic is reducing food waste. I'm kicking my stand here, sorry. So I thought that it would be good to do reducing food waste today, because I know a lot of us are spending a lot more time in our kitchens, and either maybe you're buying more than you're used to and it's going to waste, or you're wanting to know what you can do with maybe your scraps or things like that. But I have a kitty visitor down here. So I've got a couple different topics, and then I would also love to know if any of you have maybe things that you do in your kitchen, or suggestions for everybody else. Please share, because I know we're always looking to improve. And again, also, it's Ask a Chef. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask away, and I will stop what I'm doing and answer your questions as best I can. So with that, I will, I'd say let's start with storage, maybe, because I know people probably use the term where produce goes to die. the bin in the bottom. Maybe people have good intentions, they buy salad, maybe you're not storing it properly. If you aren't sure how to store specific produce, we just did an Ask a Chef on storing produce. You can find that on the Prairie Food Co-op website. That's a good one if you want some tips on how to store stuff. But that is also something that will help you not waste things, is to properly store things. You always want to make sure that once you wash something that it's dry, because the moisture will make it go bad faster, soggy if it's lettuce, things like that. So that's just one tip. For the rest, you can watch the other video. But as far as storing, so I worked in restaurants for a while, quite a while. My first job was in a restaurant. And one of the things that anyone who works in a restaurant can tell you is what FIFO is. So FIFO stands for first in, first out. And that is talking about how you store stuff. So when you have a new product, that is going to go in the back, and then you're going to move the older stuff towards the front, and you're going to use the oldest stuff first. So first in, first out. And it's easy, like we buy a lot of soy milk, so we'll have a few soy milks, and then the oldest stuff, or the stuff that comes from the store, will go in the back, and then the other items will get pushed to the front, so that you're always using the oldest thing first. And then another thing to think of is if you have bins or jars, when you're refilling it, don't just dump the new stuff on top. One of my favorite jobs was in a candy store, and we had the old-fashioned jars that it was my job to fill at the time. And that was the thing, is you don't just top it off, because then the stuff at the bottom, so for this, for example, if I just keep adding new stuff at the top, this stuff down here is not going to get used, and it's going to potentially go bad. So if it's flour, sugar, anything like that, you always want to, if you want to refill it when you've only got this much left, take this, dump it out, and then put the new stuff on the bottom, top it off with the older stuff. That way you're always using the oldest thing first. This is my nutritional yeast today. If you don't use nutritional yeast, perfect way to start, sprinkle it on popcorn. It's delicious. It's got a nutty, cheesy flavor. Lovely. We use a lot of that in our house, so I thought that would be a good example. The other thing is, when you're wanting to use the oldest stuff first, maybe you cook a lot now and you're not used to that, and you've got all of these leftovers in the fridge, and you're not sure. You're like, okay, well, I made this 3 days ago and it was really good. I really want to eat it again. We have that problem in our house. I know somebody likes to eat the delicious stuff first. And I'm always like, no, you have to eat the old stuff first, which sounds gross. Like, I need you to eat the old food in the fridge. But it's not old. It's just older than the thing that we made 3 days ago. So that would be another tip. So plan to eat that way. And one of the ways that I like to do that is, I'm going to pull out my nifty planner again. Plan it out. Maybe you don't have this specific planner, but if you have a dry erase board, I don't know if you can see all that. But even on here, I've got leftovers down here. Maybe this is a day when we have lots of random stuff in the fridge. You can pick whatever, but it's a plan, and that way I'm not having things go bad. Another way to do that is to plan to eat something that you had for dinner one day for lunch, maybe the next day. We do that a lot so that I'm not cooking 3 times a day. Make lunch or make dinner, and then you can reuse it for lunch, and you can repurpose it too. You don't have to eat it the exact same way. So maybe I made chili one night, and then for lunch the next day, I have baked potato with chili on top. Something a little different, but still using that thing that I have from before. Another thing you can do is think of things as ingredients. So maybe you made some sort of vegetable. It doesn't have to just be eaten the exact same way as before. You can have that be an ingredient. Maybe you use it for a stew or a stir fry, a wrap. We do that too a lot. I take wraps and throw whatever's left over into a wrap, and then you have lunch. add some beans, and you've got protein in there, and you're good to go. For those of you that don't know, I follow a plant-based diet. So a lot of my tips are plant-based. So, and yes, that is a great tip. Jerry, when I cook dinner, I usually try to cook for 2 nights of dinner. I love that. And another thing you can do with that is cook in bulk. So if you're making chili or soup or stews, you can always freeze it too. If you've got like a vacuum sealer, that's great. Great way to freeze stuff. And if you freeze it, you can always freeze it in individual portions. That way it's ready to go when you take it out, and you're not thawing more than you're going to use at a time. Using leftovers as stir fry or tacos, yes, that is also similar to the wrap that we like to do. But I feel like if you repurpose things, then you don't give things an opportunity to go bad. So, and then also for example, we get a big box of produce on Thursdays, and sometimes I end up with odds and ends of things that I'm just not really sure what to do with. And so something like a stew or a soup or a chili, where you can just throw in all kinds of stuff. Like I had celery root, I had a turnip, I had a butternut squash, potatoes. I don't even remember what else I put in there. Carrots. A lot of weird things. Like, what am I going to do with one little turnip? That's part of getting the produce box, but it's kind of fun for me because I get to be creative. So, but ways that you can use up a lot of something, like in the summertime, zucchini, people make zucchini bread. If you've got bananas that are going soft, we like to make banana bread. The kids love to help, squeeze the bananas through their fingers when they're mushy. That's how we know, or that's how they know that they're ready for banana bread, if they can like mash it through their fingers, and that's fun for them to help. And it's fun for me too. Let's be real here. I'm all about reducing dishes whenever possible. So if I can mash bananas by just squeezing them up, then that's one less dish for me to wash. So so you can freeze stuff, but just try not to throw away food that is good because you didn't get to it or you didn't eat it. Make a plan for that food, and make a plan for the oldest food sooner is one of the best tips that I can give you guys. Also, avoid clutter, whether it's in your pantry or your refrigerator. Don't buy too much, which is, I know, tough right now because we're wanting to go grocery shopping less often and stock up on stuff. But if you don't even know what you have in your pantry because you have so much stuff, then if it's like out of sight, it's going to be out of mind, and then you're not going to know what you've got there. So try to just get what you are going to actually use. And a good way to do that is to vary what you're buying. So buy fresh, buy frozen, and buy stuff that goes in the pantry. And that could be, like, for example, green beans. You can buy fresh green beans. You could buy frozen green beans. You could buy canned green beans. We don't buy that many green beans in our house, but broccoli is something that we love to buy. I don't buy canned broccoli. I don't even know if that exists, but I'm sure you could can it if you wanted. That's another tip. If you are familiar with canning or anything like that, then that is a good way to, that's what they used to do back in the day. When you've got your harvest of tomatoes or whatever it is, can it, and then it's good for all winter. I personally do not know how to can, so can't really give you tips there, but can segment and freeze bananas and add them straight to protein shakes. Yes, you could. That is a great tip too. Bananas don't last that long in our house. Another thing you can do with frozen bananas, food processor, and then you've got little makeshift ice cream that is non-dairy. You can add protein powder or I didn't want to say protein powder. I want to say peanut butter. You could add protein powder, but peanut butter, berries, but banana gets really nice and creamy for a non-dairy ice cream. Yeah, I'm laughing about the canned broccoli still too. You know what gift to get me, right? Canned broccoli. Oh, pickling was the other thing. I was talking about canning. You could also pickle things. Personally, I like to do quick pickles, with onions. You can just like a red onion, slice it real thin, put some white vinegar, a little bit of sugar, some salt, let it sit for like 10-15 minutes while you are preparing whatever it is that you're making. Toss it around a few times. Within like 15 minutes, the vinegar will soften those onions and it'll make them delicious. So that's just a fun, quick pickle tip. And then what else do we want to talk about? Oh, yeah. So as far as eating and wasting, if you find yourself, having a meal and then you've got a lot of waste on your plate, one, you could serve yourself less, but sometimes that's hard to do. Another tip, I went to school for nutrition, so we learned lots about, how to eat less or how to eat healthy or things like that, but use a smaller plate. For lunch today, we had stuffed acorn squash with quinoa and beans, tomatoes, arugula, and I had one on a small plate, about this big, and then one on a larger plate. And the one on the small plate looked so much more delicious because the plate was full. It was the same amount of food, but that just goes to show you that like aesthetically, you eat with your eyes. Like one, you want your food to be beautiful, but also if your plate is full, it's more satisfying, even if it's the same amount of food. So try using a smaller plate if that's something that might be helpful for you in a number of ways. So it was a good lunch. Yes, I will probably have a picture up somewhere at some point. Of course I brag. I love your comments, guys. Feel free to jump in, ask questions, share your comments. I love knowing that people are watching, interested. And this is also, yes, Amy, that's a great tip. I was going to mention that as well. We add everything we cannot chop up like stems, odd parts of veggies, fruit peels to our compost. What should we not add to the compost? That is a good question. I don't have a good answer for you, to be honest. I'm not sure. I know as far as fruits and veggies, those types of things are safe. I haven't personally started composting yet. It is on my list of things to do. I do believe in Lombard. If you're in Lombard, there is a rebate from the city. I don't know if they are doing it currently. If you buy a composter, they will reimburse you. That's side note, but I would say you would want to be careful with, same type of food safety things, like raw eggs. Not sure about that. I know you can use eggshells though, I believe, because there's calcium in there. And not sure about bones or like meat. I was actually talking to someone about that last week. And so, sorry, I don't have a good answer for you. I'm not going to say that I know for sure, but I do appreciate that question. And that makes me think of another tip that I was going to share as far as stems and add. Yes, thank you, Amy. I did get the reimbursement for the water barrel. Yes, you can do the water rain barrel, and Lombard will reimburse you for that as well. Here we go. Thanks, Jerry. So you usually don't want to add meat or too much citrus to your own personal compost. That is a good tip about the citrus. I did not know that one. So going back to stems and things like that. So there are parts of fruits and veggies that you can eat that people don't. So if you think about things like lettuce or carrots or broccoli, those are different parts of plants. So lettuce is harvested for the leaves, but that still has roots. So like all the plants have all the different parts, and not all have all edible parts, but a lot of them have parts that you can eat that you typically may throw away. So like carrots is the root of the vegetable. You can eat the greens of carrots. You can eat the tops of beets. So if you get those with the leaves on, you don't have to throw them away. You can eat those. You can saute them. Like the broccoli is the flower of the plant. You can use broccoli leaves to make like kale chips. Dehydrate them in the oven, coat them with some yummy stuff. I like to make my kale chips with a mixture of tahini, nutritional yeast, lemon juice, olive oil, salt and pepper, and just kind of massage it onto the leaves. Dehydrate them at like 200 degrees, I want to say, for 2 hours. Delicious. Oh, and a little sriracha in there, and it makes it kind of like nacho cheesy-ish. We will eat like 2 trays of those in a day. So, do you want to say hi? She won't leave me alone, and she wants to say hi. This is Luscious. My other cat is Mirepoix. I don't know where he is, but maybe now she'll leave me alone. So, yeah, so different plants, you can eat more than one part of the plant. So always look it up though. Don't just go eating every part of every plant, because you can't, that's not the case for every single plant, but there are plants that have more than one edible part. And what else do we have? Yes. Surprised it hasn't been mentioned yet, but you can make a broth with your scraps. You can save things that you would not eat and then boil them in some water and make a broth or stock that you can then use later. That goes for vegetables. That goes for the bones of like chicken or beef if you want to make stock. And that's a great way to get a very flavorful thing that you can use in your cooking. Always better to cook with something that's got flavor in it than to cook with just plain water. So yes, I know we have a lot of broth and stock. Yeah. I have visuals that I did not get to. Here we go. Oh, so going back to the stems. So I know, well, I can show you this actually too. So I like to keep my kale in water, just like a plant. When you get it on the stalk like this. I've had this for 2 or 3 weeks probably in my fridge. And easy way to take the stalk off is to just pull your fingers through. However, you can eat this. I might just cut off the end that's a little yucky because it's been sitting in water. And then I would cut these pieces that are fatter smaller. And then once you get down to this part that's not as fat, you can cut those pieces bigger. And then you can eat this in a salad raw. You can saute it. But there is a lot of nutrients in there and fiber, and you don't have to throw that away. So that's a tip with that one. And then as far as prepping produce, I could do a whole separate knife skills Ask a Chef, but for today we're just going to a couple tips on knife skills. How about that? Choose the right knife for the job. So this is a chef knife, and this is a paring knife. These are really the only knives that I use in my kitchen. Big knife and a little knife. Most of the time I'm using this knife. You want to make sure you have a sharp knife, of course. And then this is really for any work that you would do like off of your cutting board. So if I was going to like cut out the core of this is what the small knife would be for. If you have something on your cutting board, pretend it's my cutting board, and you're cutting like this, you're using the wrong knife. You want to use a large knife that you can do a rocking motion. That is why it is curved on the end, so that you can easily rock it back and forth without having to lift the tip of your knife. And so if you're wanting to reduce food waste, one of the things that we were actually tested on when I was in culinary school is our waste, and not wanting to have a lot of waste. So we had our garbage bowl, which is another tip. When you are prepping your stuff, have a bowl or somewhere right next to your cutting board where you're putting your garbage. That way you're not constantly walking over to the garbage and touching the garbage, and it makes everything a lot faster. Or you have your compost. You can have a garbage one and a compost one, depending on what you're preparing. So with this, a lot of people, this is a tomato, a lot of people will cut off the end right here. How do we show like that? They'll just cut like this. But the shoulders of the tomato is then going to waste, and that is all edible. You don't need to throw that away. So you can either, twist this off and cut wedges and then just trim off a tiny little corner of it. Or you can use your paring knife and you can cut that core out and then just pull out the part that you don't want to eat. There is actually a tool called a tomato butter, which is, it's like a little circle with little ridges on it, and you can just go to pull this out. Question: Where did I go to culinary school? I went to Kendall College in Chicago, and it is now, I want to say, called National Louis University. It was bought by someone. I think it's Kendall College at National Louis University. But it was great. I had a lot of good chefs, and it was fun, super fun. So yeah, sometimes I reference that. But so you have those for strawberries too. I always remember that it's called a tomato butter because when I was little and I was in the kitchen and my mom said, "Can you pass me the tomato butter?" I was like, "What's that? Ew, that sounds gross." But it was the tool. It was not actually like a butter with tomatoes in it. So, yeah. So that's a fun tip with that. And then apple. You can either have there is a tool that cores apples. Again, I'm not a huge fan of kitchen gadgets because really all you need is a knife, a big knife, little knife. I usually just use a big knife most of the time, a peeler too. A couple ways you can do this. You can cut the sides off and then turn it and cut the sides off again. And then you've got your square corner, but even then you've still got a little bit of there that is edible. So another thing you can do, cut straight down the middle. Kind of hard to show this without actually cutting. Cut straight down the middle, then cut straight down the middle again. So then you've got 4 pieces, and then you can just kind of scoop and cut out the core with just the parts that you're not wanting to eat. I like to do it that way sometimes too. I never use the thing. Orange. Fun tip with oranges. You can use a zester. You can use the peel. The white part directly under the orange is actually called the pith, and that is what is bitter. So that you don't want when you're zesting, if you're wanting to get flavor, or you can use a vegetable peeler to make like an orange curl if you want to put that in a drink. But try to avoid the white stuff because the white stuff is the stuff that doesn't taste good. And then if you, like, for example, if you're making a peel, when you squeeze it, that releases the oils in the citrus, and then you get the fragrant, yummy, whatever citrus it is, so orange or whatever. So that's another fun one. Lots of stuff. Again, if you have questions at any point, feel free to jump in. And I like your Kendall's like the Harvard of culinary colleges. It costs enough. It better be. So here's a tip for cans. We are ordering a lot of stuff online, and for whatever reason, I've noticed we have been getting a lot of dented cans. And I'm assuming, I'm giving, whoever I'm ordering it from the benefit of the doubt that they're not sending me dented cans. It's probably the people who are handling whatever it is. Like we got cat food we ordered, and it's in a case, like it's wrapped in a case, and each individual can was dented. Every single can. Like, I don't understand how that happens. So also, we ordered tomatoes. You can see this dent. It's a lovely dent. There we go. Whoa, there. Nice. Yeah. So typically you do not want to eat or buy. You don't want to buy cans that have dents. If you're at the grocery store and you have your choice, definitely choose a different one. However, these showed up at my house. I'm not going to just throw them away. So if you have a dented can, first of all, if it's dented in, that is different than if it is bulging or dented out. If it is bulging or dented out, you most likely want to throw that can away because it's potentially got botulism in there, because botulism will grow in an anaerobic environment. And then it will cause it to swell or expand. You do not want botulism. you don't want to try and cook it out. You don't just, nope, throw it away. This is dented in, and most likely because it was, mishandled somehow. If you're wanting to eat a can that is dented, you can submerge it in water and then look for whether or not bubbles float up. If an air bubble comes up, that means that there is a hole in your can, potentially compromised. You're not going to want to eat that. If there is no air bubble, then it's probably safe. So that's just a fun tip on that. Had to figure out what to do with all that cat food. Not going to throw away a bunch of cat food. Another way that you can use scraps. I've been making a lot of sourdough for anyone that's been following me faster than I can eat it or want to eat it. I'm also getting very picky with my sourdough. I'm determined to make the perfect loaf. We'll get there eventually. And so I've got lots of bread and lots of bread that I don't necessarily want to eat because maybe it didn't come out right. But one thing you can do, so this is all bread that's kind of hard. Hard bread's not that great. So I'm gonna you can leave it out. I would definitely slice it if it's a whole loaf. Slice it before it becomes hard as a rock. You can leave it out, let it dry, or you can speed it up by drying it out in the oven. You can cube it and make croutons, or you can throw it in a food processor and blend it, and then you've got breadcrumbs, and you don't have to throw away that bread. But I almost throw away nothing, if that's not the right way to say that, but we hardly ever throw away food in my house. Just can't do it. So that's another tip with bread. What else? Does anyone have any questions? Like, take a drink. My lovely Prairie Food mug. I have to put it out of the way so I don't spill it again. That was a fun one. If you watch, I think I was Spices. Spilled stuff everywhere. Oh, so also another thing that I did in one of my classes, this was before I went to Kendall. I got my degree in nutrition, and I had a class where we had to prepare food for the cafeteria. Well, no, it wasn't the cafeteria. It was a dining hall where people came and paid, and it was not the cafeteria. But anyway, we measured food waste. So food waste was the amount of waste on a plate after people were done eating. So there's a couple things food waste will tell you. One, was your food good? Did people eat it? If there was nothing left on the plate, everyone ate it, they loved it. That could also have to do with the serving size or portion of what it is too. But that's another thing that I use to gauge when I cook in my house, whether or not like my kids like something. If there's food left on their plate, obviously they probably didn't dig whatever it was that I gave them. And so keep track of that. Keep track of what are you throwing away, whether it's from your plate or it's something that's from the fridge. Like, do you constantly throw away the romaine? Maybe you're buying too much. Maybe you don't like romaine. Maybe you should buy something else. Either write it down or keep a mental note of what am I constantly wasting that I don't want to waste? And is there a way that I can use that? So like in the summer, I've got a lot of kale because I like to grow kale in my garden. And last summer, I had too much kale. I made kale chips. We made salads. We did so much, and actually made a kale pesto. So that was a good way to use that. I'm going to make an arugula pesto tomorrow because I got a lot of arugula from the produce box that I'm receiving. Another thing you can do is skip peeling. So like potatoes, apples, carrots, you don't have to peel. All those have fiber in the skin. A lot of them have nutrients in the skin. So if you're looking for the nutrition, things that have bright colors, like the pigment contains the nutrients. So an apple, that skin is brightly colored. It's got more fiber. There's I could talk about nutrition all day, but there's soluble, there's insoluble fiber, and you're getting different things when you're eating different parts of the fruit. So what else? Squash, seeds. You don't have to throw away seeds. You could dry them out and potentially grow them depending on where you got your produce from. But another thing that I like to do sometimes is dry out the seeds. People do that with pumpkins, but you can do that with any kind of squash. You can do that with acorn squash, butternut squash. All those seeds are edible, just like pumpkin seeds. And see my notes here. Oh, there's apps for things too. I know there's an app that people love to tell me about that I don't remember the name of the one that is current now. The one I looked up didn't exist anymore, so I can't recommend that. But there's apps where you can select the items that you want to use to cook your dinner or whatever it is. Like you can put in, I have beets and greens and potatoes and beans and what can I make, or any of those things. There's an app for everything, but there are apps where you can specifically put in the produce. Personally, I don't use an app for that. I will look on Pinterest a lot of the times, and while I don't necessarily follow a recipe to the T, I will use it to get ideas or inspiration. So maybe I'll have some sort of squash and I'm like, I'm bored of what I am making lately. I'll browse, like, I don't know, say squash and sage and whatever like flavors you're wanting to cook with. Look it up on Pinterest. A bunch of ideas will pop up. Look at the ingredients. You don't have to make specifically what it is, but it'll kind of give you a little inspiration, and then you can do with that what you want. Okay, so question. I usually chop the stems of parsley with the rest of the parsley, but can you do that with mint or thyme or rosemary? That is a good question. It depends on the herb. So one thing that I like to encourage is tasting all of the time. If you've ever cooked with me, how do you know what you've got unless you taste it? You don't. So for something like that, if you're cutting parsley, try the stem, chew on it. Is it something that you want to put in your food? That's fine. Cilantro, also fine. Rosemary, the stem of rosemary is kind of like a stick, so you're not going to want to eat that, but you're not going to know that unless you like try it. And by try it, I don't mean you have to like chew it and swallow it. You can obviously like spit it out. Excuse me. But that is so. And thyme, it depends on if it's new thyme or like mature thyme, because the new thyme will have like a soft green stem, whereas older thyme will be a little more tough. And again, like how I showed you to rip off the kale from the stem, same thing with thyme. That's another great thing. Go the opposite way that it grows. Just run your fingers down through it, and then it'll all come off of the stalk. So yeah, if you can chew it, you can cook with it. Otherwise, if it's like a stick, don't put it in your food. And I think that I covered all the things. Oh, one more thing. So expiration dates. I know lots of things, almost everything has an expiration date. And for a while, I worked at Northern Illinois Food Bank. And this is where I learned about expiration dates, because people donate food to them all of the time. Sage advice. You're so silly. Things don't necessarily go bad when the expiration date says that it's expired. So like if I had a can of something and it said expired today, it's probably fine. The expiration date is a manufacturer recommendation based on quality. So the quality at that point is going to start to decline. Typically, canned goods are good for months, potentially years, even after their expiration dates. More perishable items like eggs and dairy is going to have a shorter expiration date, but even that, I don't remember the specific guidelines. And again, it's going to be different. Like open your milk and smell it. If it smells gross, then obviously it's not good anymore. However, just because it says it's bad doesn't mean that it's 100% needs to go in the trash. If you have something that is expired and is non-perishable, because the food bank, I don't believe, accepts perishable things from people for donations, but donate it because they will know what to do with it. They will know when the recommended actual expiration date is. Like we at the food bank, we used to get like cereal in bulk, so much, like tons, like these giant bags bigger than like you can imagine. And it was supposedly expired, but it's not really expired. That's just the quality date on it. So yes, something to keep in mind when you're looking at expiration dates. So yeah, so again, if you can't, I mean, the first step would be try to reduce the waste, try to reduce in the first place, then try to use it somehow. And if it's still edible, can you cook with it? Can you repurpose it as a different ingredient? If not, compost it. And I would say, it's great for your garden. Don't necessarily like plan to compost things, but a little bit, yes. That's obviously not what we want to do with our produce in the first place, but we want to eat it because that's where it's going to give us benefit. And donate it. Donate it to a food pantry, food bank. Donate it to a shelter, a local cause near you. Or if you know anybody that needs food or a meal, maybe you've got too much of something you made, share it with a friend, share it with a neighbor. Do you have an elderly person on your street that needs assistance? Anybody, especially now is the time to help out. So, I hope that I was able to give you a few helpful tips. I loved all the comments and the feedback from you guys. It's always fun to know people are listening and paying attention to what I'm saying. If I'm ever boring, let me know because I'll try to spice it up somehow. I try to have visuals, but it's such fun, interacting with everyone on these videos, and that about wraps up today's topic. So if you have any questions about today's Ask a Chef, Prairie Food Co-op, or Culinary Confidant, please feel free to reach out through either Facebook page or website, and myself or someone else will get back to you as soon as possible. If there's a topic that you'd like to see us cover on Ask a Chef, I'd love to hear from you. You can comment on this video or send us a message directly with your idea. And don't forget to follow Prairie Food Co-op and Culinary Confidant for more content like this. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you learned something today.